Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Friday, February 10th, 2023. Black Ball Eagle Scout album came out today. This isn't a review. Maybe I'll do a more thorough review. Maybe not. That time on Monday. I can only listen to it once, but pretty big thumbs up. I mean, the land, the water, the sky. I believe that's what it's called. So that came out today. Yesterday was Jellyfish's Spilt Milk's 30th anniversary. I had a video I made, but I made a couple of... There's some issues with it. So I don't know if I'll be sharing that. I want to edit it. I'm having trouble with the editing software. Cutting chop parts in there, but it was fun. Squid, another announcement that came out that I included in that I didn't. They have a new album coming out in June that was announced the other day, called what is it called? Monolith, and the first single, I guess I'll just kind of play things by ear here. It's called, the first track on the album, Swing in a Dream, is pretty good. It's kind of electronic. Squid are a band from Brixton. They put out a debut album in 2021. I heard at the end of it, called Bright Green Field, and I really got won over by it. Sort of proggy post-punk, although I was listening to it again today, that Bright Green Field album. And part of it actually reminds me a little bit of the great New Zealand band that's not around anymore called Gatherer. Although Gatherer is a little heavier, but sort of like Controlled Chaos in a way. I mean, the riffs, kind of the some of the time changes, the vocal style being kind of out there, but not too much. And I mentioned this yesterday, and again, that video probably won't be sharing, but them, Black Country New Road, and Black Midi, among those three, came out, well, kind of popped onto the scene. I think Black Midi had a record as late as going back as far as like 2018 or 2019, but Squid's the one I like the most, and especially after the Ants from up there last year kind of jumped ship on Black Country New Road, although the singer left, so I don't know what they're going to do next. But anyway, and Black Midi I like a little kind of, at points, but I've never been fully like addicted or blown away by them. They had one track on their record from last year, Hellfire, that I liked that was rather crimsony, very busy. But with Squid, I don't know what it is. It's like they take some of the elements of those bands, they have some of their own elements. I mean, I reminded of they have trumpet and some other things, but it's a little more refined, like rock songwriting, while still being proggy, experimental, and having a little post-punk energy. And even the vocal style, when he's like yelling, his voice is cracking, ooh, that kind of stuff. It kind of fits. It's a little bit like Battles in that sense, is that it's a very unorthodox, could be easily thought of as repulsive vocal style, but for whatever reason, it fits their music. If they had just an all-clean singer, I don't know if their music would be as good. I think I actually felt that way back in 2021 or early 22 last year when I got into them. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking actually what might work is some death metal growls actually with their music in some ways. But anyway, this album, Monolith, comes out. I just hope the Rate Your Music people don't hype it up the way that Black Country New Road record. Actually, Hellfire, that Black Midi record, kind of rivaled it, but it's like Black Country New Road's Ants from Up There, and I like their first record, is now it's on Rate Your Music. It's considered like, I don't remember where it is. It was number 1 for 2022, and that's largely because I think people just kept on creating new accounts on Rate Your Music, and it loses credibility to me. I liked their debut album for the first time I liked, but 30,000 ratings. 30,000 in like a year. And yeah, it's number 115 overall. Facepalm, But I don't want Squid to go anywhere near this. I don't want Rate Your Music to make Squid into this kind of situation. Even if you should just be evaluating the music on its own merits and what it is on face value. It shouldn't. People's ratings and opinions and reviews and other people's tastes shouldn't impact mine. It doesn't always, but occasionally it can kind of add to it. I didn't like it that much anyways, and then everyone just praising this thing. A little bit like Animal Collective's Minneapolis Pavilion, the first Fleet Fox album, the subsequent albums from both of them, although neither of those bands have had the hype since those specific records. A little bit is the same thing with this, but it shouldn't matter. I mean, I'm just excited for the new Squid album. Among the records that are coming out, are set to come out this year, it's certainly up there for me now. There's other records that are going to come out that are going to probably be even higher, but I was won over by that. They were a breath of fresh air, really. For a year, the 2021 wasn't amazing. I mean, you had the Kevin Gilbert Call Me Kai thing, which was a massive thing to me, and I love that collection of records or album, that whole mixture. There was some other in this Pepe Deluxe record, but that came out in 2021. But 2021, I felt like I got introduced to that and Giant Sky, their debut, and they're supposed to put out a record this year, hopefully. I've still not spent the time guiltily with the original band Soup, and the Mask of the Phantasm, which I'm supposed to be getting that vinyl, that and the Toe Hider vinyl at some point. But the Mask of the Phantasm, the New Axial Age, was supposed to be shipped back in November, so I just sent a message to them on Instagram. Hopefully I'll be hearing more about when that record's going to come. So, but I wanted to do a video today. This is all that's all press. I want to do a video today about concerts. I haven't done the concerts, like History Memories thing in a while. I was thinking about doing that. But I was actually thinking, instead of doing memories, it's more of concerts that I miss, and I didn't pull it up. I didn't do the prep on that. In fact, I'm going to stop and pull that stuff up. All right, so so I didn't get all of it. I was trying to come up with concerts that I didn't get to go to. Oh, that's right, the Ben Sinister. Forgot about Ben Sinister. Yeah, okay. Let's see if it's on here. All right, that one's not available. No, Real Big Fish. Let's try 2008. Yeah, there it is, June 14th, 2008. Okay. Sorry about this. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10. There's one or two others I'm not remembering. I was thinking about this the other day. Probably the Ben Sinister one. That's probably the other one. So I'll add that in here. Oh, that was right around that time, probably. Shows that I might have been able to go to, or in proximity. I mean, so the first one is Rush and Marillion. It was March 25th, 1986. I was 9 years old. I'd go back in time and tell myself to go to that. That would be, they played at the Civic Center in St. Paul, that tour. It's the second time that Marillion had toured, opened for Rush. They played all of Misplaced Childhood, I believe, at that show, Marillion. And that was on the Power Windows tour, and actually I have a bootleg that has some of that show from Rush. So that was at that show, but for obvious reasons. But again, my 9-year-old self didn't know any of this music. Convince myself. So the next one I have is a little over a year later. On September 26, 1987, Marillion played their one-time, that's the Spock's Bid thing, their one-time headlining at First Avenue's main room. I don't think the crowd was very good. It was on the Clutching at Straws tour, which, reading the book, was not the most successful, enjoyable endeavor throughout the whole tour, but that was in September. I have to go back. I'm a few chapters away. I'm ahead of that now in the book, but yeah, I mean, it would have been special. But again, 87, the fall of September of 87, That was when I was in 6th grade, and I didn't know. Again, that was when Huey Lewis, the News, and all that stuff. But go back in time then. So the next one, I mean, there might be some others that I maybe will add to this. Do another one of these lists, publish this in the blog and everything. But November 8th, 1994, one of several times that Dream Theater had come here. Now this, I would like to have seen Dream Theater with Kevin Moore. Kevin Moore had left the band at this point. This is not that long after Awake actually was released. I want to say it was literally like a few weeks. When did Dream Theater's Awake come out? They played Minneapolis. I should know this because I love this. October 4th, so it's almost a month after, because it was November 8th, so it came out October 4th, 94, Awake. I was away at college. I didn't know what Dream Theater was. I knew the Pull Me Under or whatever, but they played with I Mother Earth at the Mirage, I believe, at the Mirage in Minneapolis off of Highway 55, Hiawatha, where I would see literally like less than 3 years, in 2 years, the summer of 96, I think it was, King's X with Galactic Cowboys, but anyway, that would have been a show. Even though that was with Derek Sherinian, and he wasn't even a full-time member. He was just, hired gun. But yeah, Dream Theater played in Minneapolis, or Minnesota rather. I want to say 5, 6, 7 times. Some small towns and stuff with Kevin Moore. But, pick your spot, which Dream Theater show. This was on the Awake tour, which I loved. Although I don't know how much Awake they actually played on that show. But so moving on to this list, 1995, May 2nd to the following May, which I was still away at college. That's the part of the problem is, 86, I wasn't driving, I was just a kid. 87, same story. 94, I was driving, but I didn't have access to a car really then. I was away at college, I didn't have a car. I would have had to either take the bus or I don't know how I would have been able to get to that. But the same would hold true with this show, which is a few weeks before the end of the semester and my last time away at college, actually, because I only spent 1 year at River Falls in Wisconsin, which isn't that far from the Twin Cities, but Page and Plant, because I never saw either of them, and Zeppelin was my favorite band, really, in high school, and Rush was, too, at some point, but it was Zeppelin originally. I got the Page and Plant album. I was working at Sam Goody, I think it was that summer, the summer before the 93, or 2 summers before that, rather. But it wasn't that big of a deal to me for me to see them, I guess. Part of it was money, too, when you're that old. When you're 16, 17, 18, at this point I was 19. Yeah, no, actually, I would have been 18 still at this point. I had a job bussing tables, and I got just cash and tips. I'd spend it and stuff, Part of it would have been money, even if I had access. So anyway, moving on. So I couldn't find the list. But this is the one I know I found a few years back. I wondered if Kevin Gilbert ever played here. And he did a tour where he opened as the opening act as a solo, just him, I believe. It wasn't with anyone else when he was supporting Thud. Jonatha Brooke. Jonatha Brooke, who now is a resident of Minneapolis, I believe. But I can't find it on our website. The oldest tour date I have is from 98. Because it was either her or Susanna Hoffs. I don't think he toured with. He just worked with Susanna Hoffs. I don't think formerly of the Bangles. But I don't know, I'll have to do a retract or bring that up again. But yeah, that would have meant something. But again, I believe it was the fall of 95 when Kevin was, because Thud came out, was like March of 95? I mean, there's listings for 94, but I believe it actually officially was released in like March of 95. So he was touring to support it, and there were different, he talked about in some of the interviews how there was a full Thud band at one point, and then eventually it kind of dwindled down, and then it was just him and Nick DiVirgilio. And I think when he went out on tour with Jonatha, it might have just been Kevin. But yeah, it would have been a big deal. Going back in time to myself, that's fall. I was going to community college and bussing tables, talking myself into going to that. I have no idea who Kevin Gilbert was at that point. It's like, well, you like Rush, but anyway, we all have that fantasy of going back in time, telling our younger selves about stuff. You need to figure out that time travel thing. So the next one on this list, and there's stuff that I probably remember, but Oceansize, the only time they toured the U.S., I believe, and the only time they came to Minneapolis was when they opened for the band McClusky, who was young a young band as well. They're an Irish band as well, named like McClusky, and they're actually still around. But Oceansize did play at the 7th Street in Minneapolis on June 13th, 2004. You know, again, I didn't know who they were, although I was about to get, like, less than 2 years later, like a year and a half later, I would be introduced to them. So, you know, I don't think they played alongside. I would have been able to meet Mike Vennard that time and, you know, see them. But they were supporting F. the Rest, I think, because I don't know if at that point their EP, Music for Nurses, had come out. This is why I like to know the release dates. October 11th. What date did I just say? No, that was months before. They probably had already... Well, they hadn't recorded at that point, but... So they were still supporting Alpha Rest, but... yeah, you know, I didn't even like Dredge at that point and all those other bands, so... I liked the Mars Volta, so I guess that might have been a reason to go. So anyway, then July 8th, 2006. I'm not sure if there was a previous date, because this would have been... The receiving end of Sirens played at the 7th Street Entry. And I think Casey was still in the band. Yeah. July 8, 2006, the summer of 2006. That was right around the time I saw Muse, actually. In fact, you know, I was getting into Mew as well, but I could actually look it up because I got my concert calendar here. If my internet works, new computer, I haven't had the issues I had with my old one. The Wi-Fi wouldn't pull up, but I gotta go down, go to older. Yeah, here, let's just do it. Let's just see here. July 26th. So it was a few weeks before that they would play there. Anyway, I thought that the Receiving End of Sirens toured, and at one point Casey Crescenzo and his project, The Deer Hunter, had opened for them. I want to say it was earlier than this, because Between the Heart and Synapse, they were still supporting at that point. Receiving End of Sirens came out in April of 2005. I don't think it was before that, because I think they headlined. I don't think so. But I'm thinking it was 2005, but I couldn't find a tour date that Receiving End of Sirens played. I thought it was at the Entry. At least played in Minneapolis, where, from them. But I'm not even 100% certain Casey was still with them at this point. I'd have to watch that documentary on Receiving End of Sirens, the history, and they talked about how even before they recorded Between the Heart and the Synapse and everything on the tour, they did a lot of touring. But yeah, I still would have liked to go back to see that show, whether the Deer Hunter was the opening act or not. Anyway, so that would be another one, July 8th, 2006. So moving on a couple years later, June 14th, 2008, Fish played at Shank in Milwaukee. Let's just see here, because I've told this before, I think, and I've written about it. Yeah, June 25th, 2008, I went to Chicago to see Liquid Tension Experiment. The keyboard broke with Jordan. But, so literally it was like 2 weeks before, and I couldn't justify going to the Fish show, and I thought, well, maybe I have another chance to see Fish, and as it turns out, probably not, unfortunately. I'd already had all the other members of Marillion sign my vinyl copy of Misplaced Childhood at that point. But, yeah, that was one that I now look back at. Even though I know Fish had the reputation that how his voice had gone, and he couldn't really sing quite as well. Just to have seen him once, I'd still like to meet him. That may be not an impossible opportunity, but to actually see him in concert, maybe, he's been doing his retirement tour after the retirement album, which is lasting like 5, 6, 7 years. COVID probably impacted that, but I don't think he's coming back to the States. He hasn't come here, of course, but yeah. So June 14th, a couple weeks before, I should have just found a way to do both. But, again, money's tight, you got bills, and I had gone into debt going to Nearfest 3 times and Prog Power USA 3 or 4 times, and I just couldn't. I took trips to see, like, Dredge and some other bands out of town. I couldn't justify it. That whole thing happened later in 2012 with 2 Marillion shows. The Deer Hunter, the Color Spectrum show I bought a ticket for, couldn't make it, and that was in, like, I want to say it was Boston. It was either Boston or somewhere on the East Coast, Rhode Island. That's some theater. We played the full Color Spectrum. And John Arch's 2 performances in Hartford, Connecticut with Fate's Warning, or I don't know, Fate's Warning, Jim Matheos doing Wake and the Guardian stuff, a lot of the old stuff, Spectre, and the Kevin Gilbert The Shame of the Truth tribute. Those were all happening within like 5 weeks, and it's just money and time, so you work for the airline industry. So the last two I have on this list, October 7th, 2008, which was only a few months after that Fish show, Janelle Monae played the Varsity Theater. This would have been supporting, I think, her first EP, Metropolis Part 1. She played the Varsity. Yeah, let's see here. 2008. See, I have my concert history on my blog that I published October 7th. A few days later, I ended up seeing Oceans. Oh, I do remember that. That was that local band. But I saw 3 only less than a week before that with Tubbering at the entry. So I probably could have gone to that, but didn't know who Janelle Monae was, unfortunately, at that point, of course. She was mostly associated with Outkast at that point. In 2010 was really the time she kind of blew up and people talked about her, and prog folks included. So another one that I don't have the date right now, I'd have to look it up, is Ben Sinister. Like, when was the release of... Because it was right after the album came out in 2008. October 21st. So it would have been... Ben Sinister didn't come here, because they wouldn't play the U.S. for many years until after that, until whenever I first saw them, 2013, 2014, whenever that was. But they played in Winnipeg, which is, like, Milwaukee is, at least relative proximity, about a 5-hour drive north. I could have gone to see them sometime in the fall. It was October or maybe early November. Probably late October, because October 21st, 2008, Stories of Brothers, Tales of Lovers came out, and it was after the album came out, and they were playing the whole thing beginning to end. There is the documentary Bend in the Road, which shows their touring on that. And the lineup was different. I mean, when I did see them, it was great, but some of the members of the band had played on Through Broken City, and then now weren't in with the band when I saw them. It would have been great to see that lineup. But just to see that whole record performed live would have been fantastic. But I think I probably would have had to have gotten... like, I don't know, a passport. Now, getting a passport then versus now might have been a little easier, just to cross the border. I have a passport now, but, so that was another one. And then the last one is another Janelle Monae show, March 31st, 2010 at the Varsity Theater. And, oh, how about her first album? It was a debut album, I guess. It was in... I wonder if it... because it was early in 2010, May 18th. So, okay, it was a few weeks before that. Again, it probably had, like, Tightrope as a single and video at that point, but there would have been some hype. This was March 31st, she played the Varsity Theater for the second time of 2010, but the Arcandroid didn't even get released until May 18th, so... fat chance I would have been interested, and I wouldn't have been able to hear the new album, so she wouldn't play a lot of new songs. It would have been fascinating to see that show. I missed out on seeing her in a smaller venue twice, unfortunately, but what can you do? Yeah, that's the gist of what I thought of. There's a lot of other shows that I could say is what shows happened in your town, or at least would have been realistic for you to see, to attend, that you did not, that you regret for various reasons. Yeah, I'll have to do more of these, because there's more shows I'm not thinking. I mean, there's the likes of stuff going back in time. I was born in 76, so I mean, I like to try to see somewhat realistic. And, the stuff that was in the 80s, those 2 Marillion shows, just isn't realistic. Travel back in time and convince myself. And even the Dream Theater show, but like Fate's Warning played there. Oh, I remember. The other one was Jellyfish. Jellyfish, 93. Again, not very realistic. Played First Avenue on the Spilt Milk Tour. When was that? July 6, 93. So it was the summer before my senior year of high school. Yeah, that was right around the time that I ended up going to, what's it called? Was it Sting? Yeah, it was Sting with my friend Brig, best friend from high school. When was Sting? That was June 22nd. And Jellyfish. I screwed this up. Jellyfish. It was on set list. Was it set list? No. June. What did I just say? First Avenue was July 6th. So interesting how. Where was I? Just to compare the dates. I just wanted to compare the dates, and I just lost my place. Got too many windows open here, of course. Let's see here. There it is. Sting. Oh, that's not it. I'm sorry about this. Again, the editing doesn't happen because my software doesn't want to work. But, you know, there's just a lot of shows that happen that, you know, if you're a music fan. All right, let's see. What was the date again? June 22nd versus July 6th. So literally it was a couple weeks. Yeah. I guess technically I could have, but I didn't even have a driver's license at that point. So I don't think it could have happened. I could convince my friend. My friend was driving. Yeah, because it was the summer of '93, and I didn't start driving until like that fall. So woulda, coulda, shoulda, going back in time. But yeah. So what shows that did happen that you missed, you regret? How many times? Oh, there's one other one. I was thinking about this last night. Janrenaud. It was like 2002, 2000. I heard about it through KFAI. Renaud. She's from Kronos Quartet. Did a performance. I want to say it was 2001 or 2002. I'll tell the story just in a minute here. I want to say it was 2001. Yeah, there it was. Well, might. I know it was like in the spring. It wasn't this was written in November, unless it was 2002, because I was still DJing on KFAI. Joan Jenrenaud, the cellist, one of the cellists. I don't know the history of Kronos Quartet. I want to say it was 2002, but it might have been 2001. She has this cello. There's pictures of it right there. And there's I think video too, made out of ice, and it melts, and it's hooked up to an Apple. Like a Mac computer, and the sound, the tones change as she plays it as it melts. I heard about this on KFAI. This guy Larry, who had this jazz show, talked about that. He was giving away tickets, maybe, and I was on a show after. My show was right after him. I remember him recording. I had him talking about it, and I remember I was just tired. It was on a Sunday, I think. Yes, pretty sure. Maybe it was Saturday. It was at the Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis. And I wanted to go, and I just blew it off. And like I said, yeah, I don't feel like driving down to Minneapolis to go see this thing. Regretted it. Because I know that she did a performance, but then she did a performance at the Arts Center, like as you went to go look at stuff at there. It wasn't like you're watching her perform it as the main thing. I think it was probably Sunday then. Yeah, it probably was. Yeah. And like it was, I just didn't feel like going. It was in the afternoon, so you just walk into the arts, you buy tickets or whatever, unless you're a member and you have like season passes or whatever memberships. And you look at the art, and then she's playing this cello that's made out of ice. It's melting, and it's just. I told my friend about this, and he was like, "What in the world are you talking about? That sounds like a bunch of BS." And he told it to some of his other friends that we had done the radio stuff and gone to Nearfest with, and they're like, "I think you're full of BS. I think you're full of shit." And then we found out a little bit more information about it. I don't know how long ago after that, because there was stuff on the web about it, articles and stuff. And we were like, well, maybe she'll be back and she'll do it again. And she's probably done it again. Other people may have done something similar. And I know there's this thing, you search on YouTube, the coolest show you ever go to. It's like in Iceland or somewhere, in a really cold environment where it's like a isolated, like, internal like space where there's benches and they have like places, and you just dress appropriately with jackets and gloves and hats and stuff, and it's a performance of music like instruments that have ice. So it's a similar deal, but this would have been more awe-inspiring just to see this up front. and I don't think it is. It was that and the Indiana Jones or the Raiders of the Lost Ark these kids in Mississippi over many summers in the 80s adapting basically remaking it with their money and stuff, and Spielberg got wind of it and funded to distribute it and everything like that. But that was showing not that long after that, and I missed that too. But then they did show it a few years later, and I got to see it at the Parkway Theater. But yeah, it was 2001. It was May of 2001. I have to look it up and everything. But yeah, the whole Jellyfish thing yesterday with the university got me kind of thinking I never got to see Jellyfish live. I probably never will. When could have I gone? Would have been July 6, 93. But I didn't know who they were then, and I probably wouldn't have liked them anyways that much. Who knows? Maybe. I liked the Beatles back then, but there was a period of time where I wasn't so into the Beatles. But yeah, it's a lot of shows that I've gone to. I've gone to well over 700 or 800 shows, concerts, with seeing well over 1,500 different artists perform. But there's still these select ones that at least somewhat realistically could have gone to because they were in my town, and I did or didn't know about it. So anyway, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.